Presented at the United Nations meeting in Paris in December 1951, the petition was the Civil Rights Congress utilization of the Genocide Convention, which had just entered into force in January of that year. So in the petition, they describe racial terror by the state and white vigilante groups, including the Klan, and of course the collusion between the two, as an example of the convention's prohibition or delineation of killing members of a group. And so the petition kind of describes a long durée of anti-Black violence from transatlantic slavery to the Reconstruction, to the post-Reconstruction period, and into the then Jim Crow present, and how all of this state violence had created living conditions that were so egregious and impossibly undignified that, quote, the American Negro is deprived when compared with the remainder of the population of the United States of 8 years of life on the average. The Du Boisian, quote, problem of the color line then is politicized by the petition in such a way that it, quote, links the racial terror of the lynch mob directly to more organized campaigns of colonial warfare. So there are two primary sets of dissension and rejection of the petition. The predictable first was a continuation of American political anxiety about having to sign the Genocide Convention in the very first place. This is the recognition of the possibility that the participant of the lynch mob could be hauled before international criminal tribunals for deliberately targeting and killing and terrorizing Black people. The State Department also attempted to recruit the NAACP in order to repudiate the petition as, quote, gross and subversive conspiracy in the name of anti-communism. But the president of the NAACP, Walter White, had decided to not issue the press release after the petition was enthusiastically supported by Black presses, given that the report had ultimately relied on NAACP records as its source material. So the second kind of position of dissent, a much more startling and emphatic kind of dissent, came from Raphael Lemkin in a New York Times op-ed shrouded in incredibly pernicious anti-Blackness. In his 1953 letter to the editor of the New York Times, he re-emphasized the rarity and social political magnitude of genocide, describing not only the tens of millions of lives lost in the 20th century, but also the gravity and necessity of the serious mental harm provisions of the Genocide Convention. Lemkin questioned whether, quote, one can be guilty of genocide when one frightens a Negro, because fear alone cannot be considered as serious mental harm. End quote. And furthermore, the acts of intimidation described in the petition, he says, were, quote, not directed against the entire Negro population of the country, which, as we know, is a fundamental misunderstanding of the racial utility of lynching.